for the end. And if there are things that we haven't covered that are on topic, then we'll, and if we've got time, because I think we have a lot of material tonight, then we'll tackle those as we go. Let's give it one more minute and we'll get rolling. Mara, are you back and able to admit participants if I launch the presentation?
I'm around and I'm having a lot of trouble launching the live stream for reasons that I'm trying to troubleshoot right now. It's not letting me. So yes, I'll drop in and check the waiting room periodically.
Thanks.
Why is it doing that?
Okay, thanks to everyone for being here tonight. My name is Leslie Bockel. I'm the co-executive director of NJ 11th for Change. Field Director Stacy Abenstein and I welcome you to tonight's important panel discussion, Defending Democracy, Election Rules 101 for 2021. Now, a big shout out to Mara Novak, our other co-executive director, who is behind the scenes tonight, making sure things go smoothly for us on the tech end.
So NJ 11th for Change believes that government should be transparent, responsive, and accountable. And we think it's crucial that constituents like all of us vote every time and really understand how our government works. If you agree, we hope you'll visit our website, www.nj11.org, to join our grassroots team to learn more or even make a donation to support the civic education work we're doing here tonight. Check the chat for our links.
I'll put those links in just a minute. So all across New Jersey, we've got important elections in 2021. Includes the race for governor and for your legislative districts, state representatives down in Trenton, the state Senate and the state General Assembly. Not to mention, we've got county and municipal races that really affect the daily life in your town. It all starts in less than a month on June 8th with the primary election. And that's when the Democratic Party and the Republican Party each narrow down which of their candidates will represent them when they go head to head in the general election in November. This year's elections are going to be handled differently than last year's. And of course, last year was completely different from what we were used to because of COVID. So we're glad to have you here today to learn about how things are going to work this time.
Most voting procedures are basically the same across the state, but there are variations from county to county. That's why we brought together election experts from each of the counties that have towns in the Congressional District of 11, Essex, Morris, PASSAIC, and Sussex. Let's welcome our panelists. Can each of you introduce yourself and tell us what county you're from and what's your county role? Let's start with Chris.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Chris Durkin. I am the Essex County Clerk, and I appreciate the invitation to be here on this panel with you and with Leslie, with Mara Novak, and hoping to put across as much information as possible so that voters can be more aware, informed, and have their voices heard.
Great, thank you. Matt?
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Clarkin. I am a commissioner on the Morris County Board of Elections. I was also, until recently, Mayor Michael Soriano's chief of staff in Parsippany, and I'm very excited to be here tonight and appreciate the invitation.
Thank you so much for coming. Carolyn?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Magee. I'm from Sandyston, New Jersey in Sussex County. I'm currently the secretary of the board and commissioner of registration for our Board of Elections. This is my 10th year as a commissioner, and I'm very grateful to you for putting this together.
So, no, we're grateful for you for coming. Thank you so much. And of course, John, our friend John.
That's right. Hi, everybody. Good evening. John Barlett, Passaic County Commissioner, formerly known as Passaic County Freeholder. Also, as an attorney, I practice election and campaign finance law, and have been training Democratic election day lawyers and representing Democratic candidates and campaigns for most of the last 20 years. And I have a personal interest because I'm on the ballot this year.
Very nice. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. So step one for a voter in any election is making sure that you're registered. So how can voters check whether they're registered or not? And what do they do if they're not registered? What kind of deadlines are we dealing with now?
So
Well,
I'll take,
You got Matt?
sorry, Chris.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So the easiest way to check if you're registered to vote, or the advice to give to someone else to check if they're registered to vote, if you just do a quick Google search for New Jersey check voter registration, that'll bring you to the state's website, and there's a portal there where you can enter some personal information, information that probably would not be accessible only to anyone other than the voter. And that'll bring you to a page that'll confirm, or if you're not registered, will confirm that you're not registered to vote. And that's really the easiest way to do it. It's very simple, won't take more than a couple minutes.
Great. Well, if a voter is not registered yet, is it too late for them to register in time for the primary?
No,
I'm sorry, Commissioner of Registration. Let's hear rather from you.
Okay,
There you go.
no, the voter registration deadline for the primary is the 18th of May. And there will be evening hours required by law for people to register at the county clerk's office and the Board of Elections office.
Great. And is online voter registration still available?
Yes, and if I could add to that, there is a link on the State Division of Elections website that has that portal that you can register online 24 hours a day, change your address, new registrations, update your signature. You could also register by paper, right? The old fashioned way. And town halls will be open on May 18th till 9 p.m. In Essex County, there are only 2 town halls that will not be open, and that's Essex Fells and North Caldwell. But every other town hall and Commissioner of Registration will be open until 9 p.m. to accept registrations.
Yep. Easy to remember website address is njelections.org, but what that web address will do is forward you to the New Jersey Division of Elections. And I actually just shared the voter portal link in the chat.
I saw. Thank you. Thank you. So in the primary on June 8th, who exactly can vote? Do you have to be registered for a specific political party to vote? And what if you're not registered for a party at all?
I can take that one. So yes, New Jersey uses what's called a closed primary system. Democrats select the Democratic candidates, Republicans select the Republican candidates, and so forth. Now, if you are an unaffiliated voter and you'd like to vote in one of the party primaries, you can do so by affiliating with the party. You can do that with a new voter registration form using the change party affiliation checkbox there at the top, or you can actually even show up at the polls on primary election day and say, I'm unaffiliated, I'd like to vote in the Democratic primary. You will end up having your registration changed from U to D by doing that, but it is as easy as showing up on election day if you're unaffiliated. You cannot, however, switch parties. You can't show up as a Republican and say, I'd like to vote as a Democrat today, or vice versa. The deadline for party changes is actually 50 days before the primary, so that's already passed.
Got it. Thank you.
And if I could add to that, if you registered via motor vehicle, you may just want to check what party you checked, because the motor vehicle list does have other parties which are not eligible to vote in the Democratic or the Republican primary. So, make sure that you're not registered as a Green Party person, because then you're not a Democrat, you're not a Republican, and you would not be eligible to vote in the primary.
And the risk, the thing to be aware of on that is that there is, New Jersey treats independent as a party, and I think that probably goes back to Ross Perot days.
Yeah.
For those of you who remember that far back. But
Yep.
if you're an independent, that's actually considered a party, and we're past that 50-day deadline. If you're a U unaffiliated, then you can go in on election day and affiliate.
That's correct. And also in 2018, there was the Forever Vote by Mail law that was passed, and all voters who are unaffiliated and who are receiving a ballot for the primary election receive both ballots, the Democratic ballot and the Republican ballot, and they get to choose which ballot they'd like to vote on or not vote. And if they do choose to vote in a primary for a party, they become a member of that party.
Just don't vote both ballots.
Yeah.
No, they get, well, then you're not, it's declined.
Yep.
Right, don't do that.
So I know there are new rules about voting for people who've been incarcerated. Chris, can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And I'll tell you, in the last 3 years, the governor and legislature have done amazing things in opening up access to voting. One of them being that people who are on parole or probation can now register to vote. And that was actually signed into law last year, March 17th, 2020. But people need to proactively register. So if they went on parole or probation, they were stricken from the voter rolls. So now, and that's almost 100,000 citizens in New Jersey. So it's very important for people to proactively register and get involved in the system. You know, I've always learned that the people who vote become more healthy, and the community also is healthier for it.
And
So-
someone
Oh,
who has been charged with a crime but not yet convicted is still eligible to vote.
I didn't know that part.
Correct.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. So in 2020, of course, everything was different because of COVID. So everyone got, they automatically got sent a mail ballot. So what is going to happen this time? I got one, but I am already a mail voter permanently. So I can't judge from what has happened for everybody else. Are they going to automatically get a ballot, or do they have to request it, or what's going on?
We're back to hosting a regular election. Last year, as you said, because of COVID, was an all vote by mail election for the primary and for the general election. The general election was record turnout in Essex County, in New Jersey. I'm sure in the other counties also. And we are back to a regular election where just the people who are on the Forever Vote by Mail file are receiving ballots, or if you proactively request a ballot for this specific election, or in the future to be on the Forever Vote by Mail file. And election day will be a regular election day from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Polling places will be open. I know in Essex, we're having problems with certain places due to COVID, senior buildings, that, schools must be open and available for polling places. But there's slight changes in Essex County because of COVID and certain buildings not wanting polling places there.
Yeah, the same is true.
Oh, sorry.
The same is true in PASSAIC County. So when in doubt, take a look at that little red box on the address side of your sample ballot that should come in the mail about 2 weeks before Election Day. In that box, it'll show your polling place. So if your polling place has been changed, that's the place to look. You also can find that on the NJ voter portal. And we're actually, just to sort of forewarn everyone, we're in the midst of a 3-year transition of different ways of voting. As you pointed out, Stacy, we started out with some people being all the time vote by mail and everybody else voting on Election Day. The governor very appropriately responded to the pandemic by making the 2020 elections all vote by mail. We've now gone back, as Chris said, to the ordinary way of doing things, but we're in the midst of a transition to 2021, where it's the general election this fall will be the first time that early voting is available to everyone. And in a lot of places, including Essex County, including PASSAIC County, we're in the midst of a transition to new voting machines. So there's a lot of new stuff for voters to get used to. There's a lot of new stuff for poll workers to get used to. So, be patient and also take the time and educate yourself.
Yeah,
Well, I'm sorry, I just
Go
wanted to,
ahead.
before we move on, will the electronic polling books be ready for the November election?
Yes,
Yep.
there'll be electronic poll books introduced in the general election. It'll be 9 days of early voting. In Essex County, you can have, because of it being Class A county, it could be 7 to 10 early voting sites. We're going to obviously have 10 early voting sites. You can choose to go to any of those early voting sites, and there'll be a ballot on demand printer. So you'll sign into this electronic poll book, iPad, sign it. It'll connect with the printer, print out your specific ballot, and then you could vote on your ballot and put it into the optical scan to read it.
And I'm sorry, that's starting in November, not.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Starting in November.
That's starting this November. And Chris just gave an example of how this is going to differ from county to county because counties use different voting technologies. So when you sign in with that electronic poll book in Essex County, they're going to print you a ballot. You're going to fill it out and you're going to feed it into the optical scanning system because Essex County has a voter marked ballot optical scanning system for all of its ballots that are voted in the polling place. In Passaic County, during early voting, we're going to have a new touchscreen machine. So once you sign in at the polling booth, your ballot, so mine in Wayne with my local races versus somebody else's in Little Falls with their local races, will be loaded in that ESSEX XL touchscreen voting machine, which has which prints a ballot that you can inspect before hitting the vote button. And that's the way in which there's a voter verified paper trail with those machines. But that's going to be
John, those machines will be in place in November?
those machines will be in place for early voting in November. We
Early.
will not have enough machines we'll be using the Sequoia Advantage machines that most Passaic County voters are accustomed to, that full face ballot with the push button and the little green X that lights up. That's what we'll be using on election day. And that's simply a matter of not having enough of the ES&S machines to both deploy them for early voting and on election day. That's one of the transitions we're going through. So ES&S touchscreen for early voting, Sequoia full face push button ballots that you're used to for election day voting in Passaic County.
And I just want to note that in Morris County, we will also be using new voting machines for early voting in November. However, at this point, the county commission has not yet made a selection on which voting machines to use. So we're still up in the air at this point, and it's important to stay tuned for which machine that'll be so that we can get the proper instructions.
As is Sussex County. And I wanted to mention that we will have 3 remote early voting locations. And also that there were 3 districts that have been changed for the primary, but they're all in the 5th district. Hampton, Newton, and Hardiston have 1 district each that have been, the polling location has been changed.
All right, this is all new information. This is great.
If I could put something to this, I was at a meeting and I think Chris was there. And last year went very, very well when we all voted by mail, when it was sent to every single individual. And there are approximately 4 states that already have that procedure. And I was told, Chris, were you at that meeting? I was told that the state legislature has to change it so that we can have that vote by mail for everyone. And I think that's something that we should all work on for the future, because I think that is the best possible solution for all of us to be given the opportunity to vote by mail, and we get a better voter turnout when that occurs. So I hope that in the very near future, that will be so.
Thank you.
Me too.
I want to summarize a little bit just to make sure my understanding is correct. So early voting is not in place for the primary in June. It will start to be implemented for the general election in November. And there'll be variations in how it's handled county to county and the different locations. And that's stuff that as it firms up, we'll be able to publicize and get out to our listeners. We had a question come in that that I want to address now. Can we clarify what happens if someone who's unaffiliated goes to vote in the primary? their registration is changed to the party that they're requesting, unless they then change it back after the election?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So, I totally accept that voting by mail is more convenient, it's secure, it's safer on a COVID level. But if I really enjoy voting in person, are there going to be the normal amount of polling places? Is it back to pre-2020 levels, or is it going to be handled more like 2020 with a limited number of places in general?
It's all locations should be available.
Great.
They are certainly in Sussex.
It will be.
And I apologize. I made one error. I did say that Hampton had a change, but they did not. Walpack does. And that's it. Thank you.
Very good. And all polling places across the state will have the same operating hours. It's 6 to 8. Is that right?
Yes.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of COVID safety measures are going to be in place at various polling places?
Sure. So first of all, masks are going to be required to be worn by voters who are voting in person, and masks will also be worn by all poll workers, challengers, any other staff that's in place from either the Board of Elections or the party. Items such as hand sanitizer will be available. I know in Morris County, we're working on making sure that there are masks available for voters who, for whatever reason, are not wearing one, they forgot it, whatever it may be. And there's going to be frequent sanitation and wipe downs of voting machines and other services that multiple people are going to be touching throughout the day. So the Board of Elections in Morris County, and I'm sure this is true in the other 3 counties, are taking the COVID protocols very seriously.
But Matt, you said that voters are required to wear a mask. If I remember right, in 2020, a voter couldn't be turned away from voting for not wearing a mask. Where does that stand?
And that's why the masks are going to be on hand and available, so that voters will be
required to wear a mask. They'll be turned away if they won't put it on.
That's my understanding.
Is that the same in the other counties as well?
Well, my understanding is the Attorney General has ruled that you cannot deny a voter based on a mask, but you encourage the voter. You have the supplies there. You encourage the voter to wear a mask, but you can't turn a voter away.
Correct. Yeah. Same process. We'll be have plenty of pens on hand for signing poll books, but we will be ready to sanitize if we don't have enough.
Good. So I know we talked about what types of machines are used in some of the counties. I don't know if all of you were able to talk through what kind of machines you'll be used, but I know that's one of the major variations from county to county. If you haven't yet explained the machine system in your county, could you please tell us about that? And I know, John, you were explaining the changes in PASSAIC. I know there are big changes in ESSEX. And I'm sorry, I was sort of busy tracking questions coming in, so I don't know how thorough an explanation you were able to give Matt or Carolyn, if you want to chime in too.
Sure. So in Morris County, for the primary, the Sequoia machines that have been in use for a number of years now are going to be in use once again. When we move to the general election, as far as election day goes at normal polling places, the Sequoia machines are also still going to be in use. For early voting, the new machines are going to be used, either the ESSEX or Dominion in Morris County. There has not yet been a decision made by the county commission on which machines to purchase. So probably in the next 6 weeks or so, we'll have an answer on which machines are being used and then what the instructions are for that particular machine.
Okay. And that'll apply to the primary or just to the general?
That's just the general. In the primary, it'll be just the Sequoia machines on election day.
Thank you. Thank you.
And in Sussex County, we are still going to be using the ESSEX Ivotronic touchscreen, which is a paginated screen. You get a page for each, for each office. And for the early voting in November, we have not chosen what we will be using, but eventually we will be choosing between HART, Clear Ballot, or ESNS. The ESNS would be a touchscreen. HART could be either, and Clear Ballot would be a paper ballot, hand filled out paper ballot.
Thank you.
And if I could add about Essex did approve, and the Board of Commissioners purchased the ImageCast Precinct optical scan, which Essex is now all paper, all human marked paper ballots, where whether you vote by mail or you vote at the polling place, it's going to be a paper ballot with a pen. At the polling places, it's going to be a Sharpie, a black Sharpie, and you vote in a privacy booth. You will be handed a privacy sleeve to protect the privacy of your ballot. You walk up to the optical scan and you pull out the ballot a touch from the privacy sleeve and feed it into the optical scan. If you don't have any write-ins on your ballot, it goes into one compartment. If you have any write-ins on your ballot, it goes into another compartment. It also triggers the Senator Nia Gill bill, which requires an audit. And what's interesting is last year, so her bill was put in 2006, which is incredible, 15 years ago. And she was hoping that the electronic machines would have been retrofitted with a paper trail, and that old technology could not take a new technology with a paper trail hooked up to it. So, you know, it was a long time in waiting. But last year, every county, because of an all paper election, had to do an audit, all 21 counties. But we're doing audits now for the school board, for the municipal, and now for the primary, we'll do an audit. And obviously it'll be, if there's a challenge to an election, it'll be a full count of each paper ballot for the complete district.
So one thing that that I heard from a group member was that that with the paper ballot in Essex, that they weren't offered the privacy sleeve, but people should know that it's there. And if the poll worker doesn't offer it to them, they should actively seek it out.
That's correct. A privacy sleeve is mandatory. And it's mandatory, it should be mandatory, and the board worker should understand it's mandatory, because you can't electioneer in the polling place, meaning you can't show a voted ballot to anyone. So you must have the privacy sleeve. And, you know, I even think that the ballot should be inside the privacy sleeve to begin with when handed to the voter, so that it's understood that privacy is paramount.
Very good. And one of our members in the chat pointed out that there is a demo video on your website.
That's
Chris,
correct.
The Essex County Clerk website, showing the entire process, soup to nuts, of how to use the optical scanner machine and how to fill out the ballot.
Right.
And there used to be one on the Sussex County Board of Elections. I'm going to make sure that our chief clerk puts it back up for how to vote on an electronic.
Oh, that's great. There's another question in the chat about the optical scanners. Does it matter if you insert the ballot face up or face down? Can it be in any orientation?
Yes, it can be in any orientation. Yep, upside, front ways, backwards, all of that. It reads.
Technology. Okay, thank you. That was.
There was also a question in the chat for Matt about the Morris Dominion machines. Are those hand marked?
So as I said, the county commission hasn't yet made a decision on which machines are going to be purchased. So once that's done, we'll be able to see that. But at this point, we just don't know what the machine is going to be yet. Great,
thank you. So my next question is, what about accommodations for voters who have disabilities? Can you tell me how that will be handled for in-person voting? What happens?
Each of the machine types that we're talking about here has some sort of device that can be attached to it to let the voter vote within the parameters of their disability. There are unique touchpads. There's an audio connection on the machines and so forth. And that's true whether you're talking about the Sequoia or the ES&S, or I think, Chris, also the optical scan machine.
That's
At
correct.
least some of them are going to be.
It's an audio. It's a hookup with a handheld push button for choices.
Yeah, so any of the devices that you're going to come across in the polling places will have that adaptation, and you can request it if you need it.
Thank you.
And all of the polling locations have to have been inspected for ADA compliance and are to be certified by May 15th.
Very good, thank you. So my last question about voting in person at a polling place. What if I had requested a mail-in ballot, but decide or have to at the last minute vote in person? If I lost my ballot, if I didn't request a replacement in time, if I changed my mind, what happens then?
You become a provisional voter. The page where you would sign your name will have vote by mail voter stamped for you. You will not be able to vote on the machine. You will be handed a provisional paper ballot, and you will have to vote on the provisional ballot. The provisional ballot will return back to the county Board of Elections. It will go to the Commissioner of Registration to verify if they didn't. The Board of Elections will verify that they did not vote by mail already, and then the Commissioner of Registration will verify that they are a legitimate qualified voter, and then the Board of Elections will count the provisional or not count the provisional.
I'm sorry, one more in-person question. Something came in on the chat. What is the role of poll challengers at the polling places now? John or Matt or Carolyn, would you like to?
I mean, the same as it's always been, which is, and I suspect a lot of you have probably worked as challengers. The basic function is you're there and you're entitled by law on behalf of the campaign to challenge a voter by asserting that they're not entitled to vote. I know Sue, and she moved out of town last year, and she shouldn't be allowed to vote. There are a lot of other uses that challengers get put to in terms of just keeping an eye on what's going on at the polls, getting a sense of voter flow, voter ID. Are folks coming out? Is it heavy? Is it light? Often getting vote counts periodically throughout the day. That system is going to remain in place with obviously the COVID protections and protocols to protect the challengers and the poll workers and the voters.
Thank you.
In every polling location will be posted a voter bill of rights. And if the voter has any question, they should be very assertive and active about making sure that they don't leave without having at least voted a provisional ballot if they're eligible.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Even if you're not in the poll book, even if even if somebody says you already sent in your ballot or what have you, the provisional ballot law pre-exists all of what we're talking about in terms of this new technology. It goes back to 2006, when basically if you were successfully challenged, you turned away and you couldn't vote. If if you were marked in the poll book as having received a vote by mail ballot, but you never did, you were turned away, you couldn't vote. So that protection of the provisional ballots being in place on election day for anybody whose right to vote is threatened for any reason, that's been around for a long time, and that's sort of the baseline and the protection for every voter at this point.
And it gives the
Also,
election.
I was going to say, I'm sorry, it's also important to understand that a provisional paper ballot also acts as a voter registration. As part of the ballot, there is voter registration where it's a change of address, or you could be a new voter. What happens by state law now is if you're a new voter, your provisional ballot will go back to the county. You will be registered to vote, but your vote will not count, but you'll be registered for the next election. I feel that, there's talk about, should there be same day registration? I think the compromise is that if you do a provisional ballot and you go through the steps in the process to verify that you are in fact a valid voter, you didn't vote in any other location, and you're qualified to vote, that you should be registered and your vote should count. You shouldn't, maybe you shouldn't be allowed to vote on that day on the machine, but your vote should count 3 days later after the verification process.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree that that's the right compromise, and it avoids any risk of double voting, of somebody walking in and registering to vote at some address when they've already voted at some other. That doesn't happen in real life. Of course, that's the great GOP myth of voter fraud. But you know, to Chris's point, I think that's exactly right. If your provisional ballot is a voter registration, then by all means, you know, allow that ballot to be cast on the day you cast it.
So provisional ballots basically preserve the voters' right to get their vote logged, while also allowing the Board of Elections to double check to make sure nothing fishy is going on. It's
Correct.
time.
Every provisional ballot is research, yes.
Very good.
And every ballot that is cast counts, whether it is a mail ballot, you know, put into the drop box or the mailbox, if you vote in person, or if you fill out a provisional in person. So people are under the impression that, you know, that if you put in a provisional, they're only going to count it if it's close. That is not the case.
Correct.
Casey, can I just say that is probably the most common misconception about the voting process that I hear.
Exactly.
So I'm glad you mentioned that.
I just had to throw it right in there. I am a big fan of mail-in ballots. Can someone give us a quick rundown on how to fill one out? And I would love to know if there are differences between the counties.
There's no real, I mean, the differences between the counties are going to be ballot design. You know, until recently, our vote by mail ballots in Passaic County didn't look like what you saw on the machine when you went into the polling place. That's changed now, and our vote by mail ballots look just like the polling place ballot and the sample ballot that you get in the mail. But they're all basically optical scan ballots. So you fill in a bubble. You don't fill in too many bubbles because that's an overvote. You seal it up, sign the inner envelope, seal it in the external envelope, and send it in. But they're all basically the same in that they're optical scan ballots. I did a video last summer that's on my YouTube channel, which I'll put a link in the chat, that basically explains everything that comes in that envelope and what to do with it.
And if I could add, as far as the voter vote by mail application goes, the voter puts their name, their address, their registered address, and then if it's a different address to where they want their ballot sent to, they put that address, their date of birth, and then they can check off whether or not they want a ballot for just that specific election or for all future elections. So there's two choices for there. Also, there's a portion at the bottom where you can have a messenger go to the county clerk's office with your application and pick up a ballot for you, but you as a voter must sign in two places. You must sign at the top portion as the voter, and you must sign at the bottom as authorizing the messenger to pick up your ballot. A messenger can only pick up 3 ballots, can only drop off 3 ballots unless it's a new law where you can do 5 ballots if it's a family member and you reside in the same household.
Yep, and that came out of a Passaic County case where a guy who was head of household brought in his own ballot and 5 others and was told, choose which 3 you want to count.
Ooh. Carolyn, what were you saying? Sorry.
So Sussex County has a wonderful instruction page on how to vote by mail. It's on the Sussex County Clerk's website, but we'll also be enclosing that in with our vote by mail ballots. We do have a slightly different envelope situation, and I want to make sure that two of the errors that come up that I hate to see, or actually 3, is that they don't now, as of current law, if the inner envelope is not sealed, the ballot, it does not count. That did not used to be the case. And make sure that the certificate remains attached, or at least in the outer envelope. And also, as far as filling out the ballot is concerned, if you're writing someone in, make sure you fill in the oval.
And I just want to make
Oh.
a note specific to Morris County. Recently, we had a change in the design of the inner envelope. The inner envelope is the envelope that you put your signature on, and the envelope that you put your ballot in. It used to be that you would need to fill in your name, address, in the case of your primary, in the primary, your party, and as well as your signature on the inner envelope. That is now changed so that all you need to do is put your signature. It's no longer required. All the information that was previously required is already filled in on the inner envelope for you. And that's really decreased the amount of ballot rejections that we've seen in Morris County in the last year since it was implemented.
That's great. I don't remember that being a part of Essex County's ballot. I don't know if it's changed at all. No. So I do have a question for you, Chris, though. So will the ballot that you get when you go to the polls that will be used with the optical scanner look exactly like the mail ballot? Because I know they used those optical scanners last year to feed in the mail ballots. So
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, the
okay.
ballots will be the same. And because the mail ballots are being put into optical scanners at the Hall of Records, just like, well, different, but same technology as the polling place. But yeah, the same ballots.
Okay, that's good. And what happens if somebody, I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I get asked this every election cycle. What happens if they go, oh no, I put 3 dots. I was only supposed to put 2. I can't send it in. What do I do? Like, what do I do? So will you tell us the best thing to do if you mismark your ballot?
You should ask for another ballot.
Exactly.
That's what I tell them.
Yeah.
That's right. Don't try and erase it or white it out or anything else. If the machine, if you've got, just like, the SAT or anything else, if it counts as an overvote, the entire vote in that race is going to be disregarded.
And it's the county clerk's office that you reach out to for a replacement ballot?
County clerk's office.
Clerk.
Yep.
County clerk.
And initials like on checks do not count as I made a mistake and this is what I really meant.
No.
Right. Now it always is the last minute person who does that. So if they do that, can they go to the poll and vote on a provisional ballot?
Yes.
As long as they
can
didn't
also
mail
do that.
them, yeah.
Okay.
Even if they mailed it in, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but even if they mailed it in, if the ballot they mailed in is spoiled, it therefore won't be counted and their provisional therefore will be.
That's correct. If they mail in a vote here's interesting. If you mail in a vote and it is a valid vote and it is counted and you do go and vote on a provisional ballot, your mail-in ballot will count, your provisional will not count, and you possibly could be visited to be questioned on what happened. We've actually had that with elderly couples who gotten their ballots 40 days before election day and then go, I shouldn't say that, Mara, right? It could happen to anyone. But,
It could happen to anyone.
well, that's unintentional.
Yeah.
But
You
yes.
lose track. Let's just say lose track.
Right. Or if if you mailed your ballot and then you get back and you discover the inner envelope sitting on the kitchen counter, which means you mailed a naked ballot, go vote a provisional on election day. And your naked ballot may not be counted. And if it's not, then your provisional will be.
And you'd be surprised. The worst thing possible is, now a signature can be cured. A missing signature can be cured, but a missing ballot cannot be cured. And there is a bad percentage of people who do not put their ballot in the return envelope, the return package. And that cannot be rectified unless you, like you said, vote on a provisional ballot or go to the Board of Elections and say, I forgot to put my ballot in. I need to put include my ballot.
Right. And I would, if you are going to go vote a provisional ballot, I would still contact the Board of Elections so that they're aware of the situation.
I have a question
couldn't
for
hurt.
Chris. Chris,
Yeah.
if you go to the polling place and you fill in the ballot incorrectly and you know you did a bad job and you can't use it, will the board worker give you a new ballot?
Yes, yes, the
That's
board
what I
worker
thought. I
will,
wanted to
you'll walk
make
back up to the table and ask for a new ballot, and they will void that ballot and hand you a new ballot to vote on. Absolutely. And you said our new machines will tell you if you overvoted a certain
Yeah,
office.
I know. that they
Yes.
do that,
you-
Yeah.
But
Oh,
there's a
that's great.
rule on that.
Mhm.
So, all right, so let's just go over some of the basics, how to return it and what are the deadlines?
So how to return the vote by mail ballot?
Mhm.
So there's really 4 ways. You can use the secure ballot drop box, which I think is the best. Well,
Best.
the best could
Yes.
be, you know,
We love the bad
and we have
drop off.
26. We have 26 secure ballot drop boxes in Essex County, picked up on a daily basis, the contents. And you could also go in person and bring your ballot back to the Board of Elections in person. You could send a messenger with your ballot. The importance of, if you send a messenger, your messenger must sign the outside of the envelope, of the ballot envelope, must sign there as the messenger in your presence. Because if they don't do it and they get to the Board of Elections and they sign in front of the Board of Elections, it is not going to count. It gets discarded because of the chain of custody issue. So
That's the bearer certification. And if you look at the video that I linked to, there's an explanation of how that works. And Chris is exactly right. It's about chain of custody. It's about proving that the ballot that you handed to your friend is the same one that your friend handed to the poll.
Board of Elections. That's right. And then the 4th way is the U.S. Postal Service. And now there's a new law that allows for the ballots to be postmarked election day or prior and come in, 48 hours?
48 hours.
No, 140.
It's more, yes.
Last,
44
it was
6 days.
it was 7 days last year. Was that just a COVID accommodation, Chris? Or is
No,
it still
No,
now 7
no,
days?
it's
We're good.
it's 6 days.
6 days now. It's 6 days now. That's what, yep,
The 48 was if it didn't have a postmark.
correct.
The, yeah, the drop boxes are picked up, the ballots are picked up by people of different parties, just so
Correct.
the voters know that. They're a pair of 2 people of either party. And make sure that the voter does not put it in the municipal box where you would put your taxes.
Very important. Quick question
In
about.
Livingston, they're lined up. That's why I'm smiling.
I would also just like to add to what Carolyn said. Just about everything at the Board of Elections that happens with a mail-in or provisional ballot occurs with the presence of at least 1 Democrat and 1 Republican. Almost everything is done in a bipartisan way to protect the security and integrity of the election.
Chris, in Essex County, doesn't a sheriff's officer bring the people to pick up the the ballots from the drop box?
Yes, and that was because of you. And that was great for security purposes. I remember that phone call, and you made sure, because of security purposes.
Right.
And we.
That's what should happen in every single county, so it's secure. It shouldn't be people from 2 different parties. It should be.
Well, no, it also is, it also is one of each, a member of one of each party and a sheriff's officer, right, in Essex.
I'm aware of that, but they were just saying that in some counties, it's just people from each party, and it should be a sheriff's officer also for security. And also the drop boxes are open now, and they will be open until the election, because I already checked with Chris to see when they would be open.
That's correct. And
Chris-
Essex County currently has 13 drop boxes. We're adding 3 more.
Awesome.
Great.
Those are locked at 8 p.m. on election day.
And Carolyn, will the list be on the website somewhere? Because we'd like
It's on Sussex County Clerk's website. Yes.
Great. We had one question in the chat that I wanted to jump in on. I think we've kind of covered this, but to reiterate, mail-in ballots cannot be brought to the polling place because we're not going to have a drop box the way we did, correct? Someone asked that question again.
That's funny. That's what I was just about to mention.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it was acceptable last year for the general, but it is not acceptable And they will probably be directed to a Dropbox.
Thanks.
Post office, right.
Just
Great.
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, no, continue. Sorry.
Oh, just a quick nuts and bolts question. In 2020, when you mailed in a ballot, it did not require postage. Is that still the case this year, or was that just a COVID accommodation?
That's the case in Essex County. No postage necessary
Okay.
for return ballots.
Same
Right.
in PASSAIC.
Yep. Same in Morris.
Yes,
Great, thank you.
Same in Sussex as well, Carolyn?
yes.
Oh, awesome. Also one of my favorite things.
So the next thing would be how to track your ballot, right? So where do people find the tracking number? And how long do you think they should expect that it takes for it to be noted that it was received?
Matt, do you want to fill that one?
Yep, I'm just grabbing the link from the state website and I'm going to put it in the chat.
Thank you.
All right, so the link is in the chat to the Track My Ballot website. Once you send in your ballot and it is received by the County Board of Elections, it'll be marked as such on the state website. There was an issue last year where ballots were not marked as received until essentially the conclusion of the counting process. That's being worked on this year, so that ballots are going to be marked as received significantly sooner than that, because, you know, obviously that's what people sort of expected with the Track My Ballot system.
Right.
So the original intent of that track your ballot system was to then see when your signature and all was accepted and when your vote had been counted, which didn't really happen last year. Do you know if that's going to happen this year, or is it going to be exactly the way it was last year?
So I don't want to overstate this, because I know that our superintendent of elections is still in touch with the Secretary of State's office. So I don't want to misspeak on that without having spoken to her.
Yeah, but basically the issue was, you know, until they actually do the signature comparison and strip the ballot and scan it, it's not going to be coded as counted or accepted. And, you know, in some cases that happens on or after election day. And in some cases, there's just delay in getting it coded into the system, even if it's been processed. So like Matt, I don't know exactly how that's going to be handled, but it's an imperfection in the process that I think counties are still trying to work out in conversation with the SOS.
It's a big imperfection. I would say it was even a big problem last year. However, I will say that there is going to be a lot less ballots, mail-in ballots this year, just by the fact that so many people are going to be voting in person. And just that decrease in volume is going to help make that process a lot faster.
Significant, yeah. Sussex County is hoping to receive all ballots that arrive that day. We're a smaller county than some of these others, so we hope to have everything received into the system on the day we actually receive it.
Well, I asked because my ballot was in very, very early last year, and it showed as received right away, which was terrific. Mm-hmm. But I know that we started to open them ahead of the election day, because there were going to be so many. I don't know if that is the case of this year or not, but it didn't move to accepted or voted or whatever the hell it was. It wasn't moved to that until like after the election was over.
Correct.
Right.
What are the different things? Oh, sorry, Stacey.
No, continue.
What are the different things that it will be tagged as it goes through the tracking process? Received, counted?
My understanding is it's received and accepted, right, Matt?
Yeah, if it needs to have a cure, it will come up as rejected earlier on. Mm-hmm. The voter will receive a letter requesting the information that they're required to submit to cure their ballot.
That was actually the next question we were gonna.
Yeah, I was-
Wanna dig into that?
I mean, really, quite honestly, everybody sort of answered most of what I was going to ask, but Chris had mentioned the type of problems that can be fixed. And now we just mentioned that it'll be addressed by letter. What exactly is the process? How long will it take between receiving it and getting the letter? Then once you send it back, how long will it take till it says that it's received or accepted? So that because people worry, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, as soon as the problem is detected, the cure letter is supposed to go out. And the cure letters I've seen, have a, dear so-and-so, here's a problem with your ballot. And there's a couple check boxes that the poll worker might use to indicate what the problem is: signature non-match, signature missing, and so on and so forth. That should happen pretty quickly, which means the day it's received, the next day, the day after that letter should be generated. And then however long it takes to reach you by US mail is how long it'll take you to find out.
There's a question in the chat about, can you return the cure letter in a Dropbox?
Wow.
Oh, not if the Dropbox is locked. I mean, so all
Right.
Dropboxes will be locked June 8th, 8 p.m.
Right. Well, so if you got your, it's like if I voted now and I
Yes,
got my cure letter in a week,
yeah.
could I put my cure letter in a Dropbox? That is the question in the
Yeah,
chat.
and we get vote by mail applications all the time through the secure ballot Dropbox. But yeah, you're right. It would.
And you process those, Chris?
We do.
So is that, but not everyone does? I don't know.
We do.
There's always the one question I don't know the answer to in any forum. I would think, because it all goes to the Board of Elections anyway. So if somebody puts in there a cure letter or a vote by mail form request, it stands to reason that it gets processed. But I've never posed that specific question to my Board of Elections.
I can tell you that in Morris County, anything that was placed in the secure Dropbox before it was locked, obviously, that came into the county was processed.
Yeah, and SUSSEX, we didn't have any cures come in through the Dropbox, but I suspect that the commissioners would vote to accept it.
Okay. See,
But the letter does say otherwise. It can be faxed, emailed, dropped off directly, mailed.
okay. So yeah, there we go. Well, that was your weirdest question of the night.
There are a lot of ways to return your cure letter. If you feel like living dangerously, you put it in the Dropbox.
It looks like it'll probably be fine.
Well, this is all great. We got a couple questions in advance from our audience members that I wanted to dig into. Why aren't rules the same for all voters in our congressional district? Like, how are the rules decided and by whom? Is it the county executive? Is it the clerk's office? Is it the Board of Elections? Like, why is there variation from county to county?
Well, there's the manner in which states conduct their elections as a matter of state law, not federal law, with sort of basic federal mandates, like it has to be the first Tuesday in November, because that's in the Constitution. So state law sets out the system, and then counties have a fair amount of leeway in how to carry it out. So state law last year created the Dropbox system and set a minimum number per county. A lot of counties like Essex and PASSAIC exceeded that minimum number because we wanted to get those drop boxes in as many places as possible. Likewise, ballot design is designated by statute as a function of the county clerk's office. So it's going to look a little bit different. There's a handful of vendors out there. Some county clerks do it in-house. So you're going to get modest variations in how it looks from county to county.
Here's what I'll say. If I could add, as far as the deciding on the method of voting, voting machines, that is decided on by the county, really by in some counties, the Board of Elections, some the Superintendent of Elections. and it is approved by the Board of Commissioners, the purchase. In 2002, there was the Help America Vote Act, which happened because of the 2000 presidential election. And what that in part said, I mean, it said a lot, but in part it said, county can only choose a voting method if it has been certified by your Secretary of State. So, and it was because of the butterfly ballots and, you know, the Miami-Dade County way of voting, that every county before 2002 was just choosing whatever method they wanted without any certification or verification. And in 2002, when that came into place, the Secretary of State of New Jersey would go through a rigorous process of certifying voting methods, and then we could choose from one of those voting methods. As far as design of the ballot, the county clerks are guided by state statute, by court rulings. As far as bracketing, it has been ruled, that's also in state statute as far as allowing bracketing or the ballot design as far as placement of offices in order. And also, I try as a county clerk to not create too much space between candidates. I try and make sure that the next available position is utilized for candidates in Essex County. So I just wanted to put that on the table.
Yeah, well, Chris, actually, that was the next question we got from more than one audience member when they registered, and it's certainly a hot topic these days. The issue of the line where the party organization's favorite candidates within their party get grouped together in one prominent line on the ballot for the primaries, and concern that any other candidates that are also in that party could get placed way off to the side so they look like they're not legitimate candidates. Who does, I know you explained sort of your approach to it in general in New Jersey and all of our, in Sussex and Morris and PASSAIC too. Who decides how that ballot is arranged? And members have wanted to know, like, if you have a line on your ballot, like, what do you think about the value of it, about keeping it, about getting rid of it, about how it should be handled?
So I would start with a little bit of historical perspective. When you're talking about the county line, as they call it, in this case, the row that you'll see on the Passaic County ballot with Phil Murphy and Sheila Oliver at the top, and my name further down the list, and municipal candidates further down that list. There was a time period before 2008 when whoever had that line automatically got the top line or the leftmost column on the ballot, without regard to what other candidates were running. That became a subject of litigation between Frank Lautenberg and it
was actually Shumler Donovan. So Shumler Donovan,
Ferguson, a congressman from the 1st district after Florio and before the current Congress. Anyway, regardless, there was a primary for the United States Senate, and the issue was litigated. Does the party automatically get the A line or the #1 column? And the ruling was no. There has to be a draw for who gets that first position. So the state implemented this process where the county clerks draw the ballot. Now that happens based upon the topmost office on the ballot, whether it's U.S. Senate or governor or president or what have you. And anybody who has affiliated with that candidate joins that candidate in line. So the way in which folks argue that creates a disadvantage for down ballot candidates that aren't on the line is that if you're not affiliated with the gubernatorial candidate, with a gubernatorial candidate or a U.S. Senate candidate or congressional candidate, however it happens to be that year, you're not going to be part of that initial ballot draw. You're going to get at least whatever the next column is. And that becomes sort of a cascading thing, because as you work your way down the ballot, you move further and further off, those initial lines. Now, the alternative, because people read columns and lines as affiliation, the alternative would be to group people together that may not want to be grouped together. But in 2018, there were two candidates for U.S. Senate, the incumbent Robert Menendez and Lisa McCormick. Had somebody been running for county freeholder or mayor and put in for the primary but not affiliated with Senator Menendez, you could put them right next to their competitor, but the appearance would be that they were affiliated with Lisa McCormick, which they might or may not feel that they wanted to be on the ballot. So this is the dilemma. What rules do you establish to set to set the guideline? And if you're not going to draw from based on the topmost position on the ballot, what are you going to draw based upon?
And John, if I could add, the 2005 case, which was Brett Schundler against Kathy Donovan. Kathy Donovan was the Bergen County clerk, and Kathy Donovan awarded the county organization the top line. And Brett Schundler, there were about 5 statewide candidates running for governor in the primary, and Brett Schundler thought that was unfair, that he was automatically had his best available line was B or worse. And he went to court, and the courts decided that any statewide candidate, which is U.S. Senate or governor, has a fair and open shot at the top position. And from then on, every county clerk has to draw ballot positions for any statewide candidate, and whoever aligns with those candidates falls in line with those candidates. And then the 2008 case was
Rob
Andrews, and that was a First Amendment right to bracket. So what happened is Andrews said, we want to run a candidate for U.S. Senate without the line. We just want to run independent, one-on-one or two-on-two. And Lautenberg went to court and said, I want to be able to bracket with like-minded candidates. And the judge out of Trenton, Judge Mary Jacobson, ruled that Lautenberg had a First Amendment right to bracket with like-minded candidates.
And is that why it is not grouped by office?
Right.
Because
Correct.
in like North Carolina, where my son used to vote when he went to college, everyone running for president, everyone it was just listed.
And this is it's either for the courts or for the legislature.
Yeah. And I believe there is at least one county in New Jersey that does it that way.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember, I forget which county.
I think it was Salem and something else.
Sounds right. That sounds right.
So we are unable to do a line on our machines. We don't have a full face machine. We have a paginated machine. So we're unable to create that on our machines.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a point of information, the State League of Women Voters is pushing against the line.
This is the line is such a huge topic. Pro and con. I know that the arguments for and against are complicated and subtle and have huge ramifications. And I want to draw us back into to our focus tonight, which is making sure that everyone who's listening knows what they need to do to make sure their vote counts this year. And there were a few more questions that came in advance. Do you have the next one handy, Stacy?
I do. Once somebody moved, even if they're within the county, like they just moved from Livingston to Verona or whatever, or even if they moved from Livingston 9 to Livingston 14 across the street, do they have to change their address? If they don't, can they still vote? And how would they update their registration?
They should change their address on a voter registration form prior to 21 days prior to election day, or online voter registration. They can change their address. If they don't, they can always vote provisional at the polls, and that provisional ballot will act as a change of address form, and their address will be changed in the system and their ballot will count.
Right. And is that there's a little bit of a wrinkle there, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. For example, if you move within your municipality from one ward to another, if you're new at your votes will count for any of the races you were entitled to vote for at your new address. But if I move from Wayne Ward 2 to Wayne Ward 4, and I cast a vote for the Wayne Ward 2 Democratic candidate, that wouldn't be counted because I'm no longer somebody who's entitled to vote that race.
You're right. That's correct.
Okay. So there's been a lot of talk about election security lately. So let's see if we can just get a quick answer about both voting in person and vote by mail. What are the security measures?
Well, I mean, if I could, I would say that we have a bipartisan process set up. Voter fraud is negligible. There's a system set in place. If anything does occur, it is caught. And the FBI testified there is no organized voter fraud. This 2020 was the safest and most secure election in our history. People have been caught because of the bipartisan process, because of the steps of matching the signature, and because of all the laws in place. So I feel, that the system is set up to hopefully encourage voters and not deter voters, like I know a lot of states are trying to do.
Yeah, and I would just add that anyone who thinks that voter fraud is a bigger problem than voter participation does not really know what they're talking about. The extent of the bipartisanship, particularly when it comes to mail-in ballots in New Jersey, just, eliminates most of the problems people could come up with off the top of their head when it comes to security of mail-in ballots in particular. Everything is handled by at least one Democrat and one Republican.
Yeah, I wish you all at some point could see the stripping and counting process for
Sure.
vote by mail ballots, because I can talk for Passaic County, for example. The Board of Elections members are sitting on the dais where the county commissioners operate from in non-COVID times. There's a screen and a projector. The signature from the polling, from the voter record is projected. The signature on the envelope is projected. And if there's anything that needs to be discussed, a discussion is had, as Matt said, among the even number of Democrats and Republicans on that board, and a determination is made, count it or don't count it. Even then, there are those fail safes. I think Chris had a very strong point, which is that, and Matt did as well, voter fraud is not a problem, voter participation is, but also at every step, there is a fail safe to protect the individual's right to vote. If your signature doesn't match, or if you fail to sign it, or if you sent in a naked ballot or what have you, there's a cure process. You get a letter, you get a chance to fix it. If you never got your vote by mail ballot, there's the provisional ballot process. If you show up at the wrong place, or you're not in the poll book, or something else happens, there's the provisional ballot process. At every possible permutation, there's a fail safe to make sure that that voter gets a chance to cast a ballot by election day. And as long as it's determined that they're entitled to vote, it ends up getting counted.
And may I just add that a delay does not mean fraud or malfeasance. It means that we're doing our job well.
Yep. And I also do want to say that I have found, I can't speak for the other three counties, obviously, but I have found that in Morris County, all of the Board of Elections staff and all of the Board of Elections commissioners, including the two Republican commissioners, are very pro-voter when issues come up that are under Board of Elections or commissioner discretion.
Agreed. Same in Sussex.
That is really good to hear. Lastly, on my list, so writing candidates, is there a specific way they have to be written? If there's different spellings, or does it have to be spelled correctly? How does it work?
So my understanding is, as far as a write-in vote for a paper ballot, you must fill in the oval first that you are going to commit to a write-in, and then you write in your candidate of choice. Now, John would know this better, but my understanding is judges and courts have ruled that if the intent would be understood, that that's what you were trying to do. And so, like, if I wrote C. Durkin or Chris Durkin, it would be understood that I am the candidate, especially if I'm getting multiple votes as a write-in, that I would be that would suffice an attempt at the name.
Exactly right. In terms of mechanics, the link I posted earlier to my YouTube channel, I've got how-to videos on how to write in on the machine and on a paper ballot. But exactly, the magic phrase here is the intent of the voter.
Right.
And as long as they look there, and if you left the H out of my first name, or if you did or didn't include my middle initial, or if you spelled Bartlett like Aaron Sorkin does instead of like everybody else does, as long as people can tell you're trying to write me in, that vote's going to count for me.
I only asked
The one sort of caveat to that is write-ins cannot count for candidates who already appear on the ballot. So if you're in Passaic County and you're tempted to write in John Bartlett to show how much you support him, don't do that.
Yes.
Just fill in the bubble next to his name.
And in fact, it's an overvote. And, I've seen ballots like that where somebody wanted to make absolutely positively sure that their vote counted. So they filled in Joe Biden, and then they filled in write-in, and they wrote in Joe Biden and then Kamala Harris. That ballot didn't count because it was an overvote.
And if they only write it in the write-in slot, it doesn't count.
Yeah, if the candidate's on the ballot, that's correct.
Yeah.
That is such an important point, and I don't think everyone understands that. That's
didn't know
actually
that.
really a big deal.
Yeah. And
I
actually
only-
I want to just raise a related point there in terms of handling your paper ballot. No matter how strongly you feel, just fill in the bubble. You want to underline that name, you want to circle it, you want to cross out Donald Trump. I get it. I feel that. But anything like that is going to be called a stray mark, and it's going to resulting in the machine kicking your ballot out and not counting it at all.
I asked that write-in question because I know there is that lore about Lisa Murkowski in Alaska having to teach everyone how to spell her last name.
If there's a vote for two on the ballot and you put the same name twice, it will only count once.
Good to know.
Right.
Technically, you're counting one name in one office and one name in the another office.
Oh.
So it really only counts once.
And do I remember correctly that if for one particular office you overvote, that office, your vote is invalidated, but your votes for other offices are still legitimate, are still counted?
Correct.
That's right.
Correct.
Great.
Can I just clarify on the cure?
Yes.
I'm concerned that people are going to think that in Sussex County, we're going to get your cure letter out immediately. Because a ballot that requires a cure is technically rejected. The commissioners have to meet in order to reject it. We do have 72 hours to get that notification to you. And with a provisional ballot, we have 48 hours.
Got it.
And the voter has 5 days after close of polls to return the cure letter or the information that is required.
Great.
So we did get a few questions that are hyper specific about graphic design on ballots and envelopes and about comparing our counties to Hudson County. I'd love to save those and send those to you guys after the fact, and maybe wrap up with one very practical question. Many of us are getting our ballots in the mail now, which is really exciting. If someone didn't get a mail-in ballot and they think they should be getting one, or if someone decides last minute that they want one, what's the last date to request it? What are the ways to request it, even if you're down to the wire?
So the last data requested by mail that we would, as the county clerk's office, would be mailing you a ballot is 7 days prior to election. So in this case, we must have the application in our office by June 1st, 4 o'clock, and we will mail a ballot. By state law, when it gets within 6 days, we're not able to mail a ballot. From then on, a voter would have to walk into the county clerk's office to request a ballot or send a messenger to bring their ballot back to the voter. And a voter or a messenger has until 3 p.m. the day before election day to request a ballot from the county clerk's office. After 3 p.m. the day before election day, there are no vote by mail ballots issued. And that is so that we can update, and the Superintendent of Elections Commission Registration can update the poll books of who's requested a ballot and not to allow them to vote on the machine on election day.
Got it. that carries through for the other counties as well? You guys are all
Yes.
Yes, yes.
great. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. You've been so generous, staying later than we expected because there's so much to cover. Do any of you have anything you'd like to add that you feel like we've missed that's crucial for voters to know?
I would like to get some links to you. I am not actually on a computer, I'm on the phone. So I will send those directly to you. And if you could disseminate them, I would appreciate it. There is, however, one error I see on the county clerk's page, which indicates that all voters will be receiving a mail-in ballot, which obviously was not changed from last year. So I will be sending that link though.
Great, thank you.
And I will let them know.
Thanks, Carolyn.
And we'll be happy to send out an email to everyone who's registered here with the links that all of you have provided. So thank you very much for that. Matt, anything you wanted to add before we wrap up?
The only thing I would say is that, first of all, this was a great discussion and I really appreciate the invitation. I think the most important thing for everyone attending to now take out of this is to not just absorb the information and use it for ourselves and our own households, but talk to our friends and our neighbors and others about this process because, you know, it is frankly confusing. There are a lot of rules and regulations and issues of discretion that go into it. And the more people we're able to tell about these issues, the better voter participation and lack of voter confusion is going to be.
Absolutely, thank you.
And I would, you know, to what Matt said, I would add, you know, whether it's Chris, whether it's Danielle, Ireland, Imhoff in my county, whether it's our Board of Elections staff or the members of the Board of Elections, everybody is out to, these are good people who are out to do the right thing and make sure that votes get counted and that everybody who's entitled to vote has every opportunity to do so. The fail-safes are built in, but if you have questions, contact your county clerk, contact your superintendent elections office or Board of Elections. You know, find me on social media and ask a question if I haven't already answered it in one of the videos that I've got on YouTube. You know, I enjoy any opportunity to demystify the process. So thank you, NJ 11th for Change and the whole team for doing this and for all the voter education you do throughout the year. I'm really glad to be part of it.
Well, thanks for being here and for the kind work.
Chris.
Thank you. I'd also like to, I don't know, would you like to go first, please?
No, go for it.
I'd also like to thank you for the invitation. It's an honor, and I will verify that John Bartlett returns every text I send him. So I appreciate that. Our collective goal should always be about expanding opportunities and access to voting, to casting a ballot. And in doing so, we will strive to even better representation. And in the end, the more voter participation, the better the representation. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great.
So important. I agree.
Well, we have to wrap up now, but thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. Our audience for your great questions and for your attention and for going forward, sharing this information with people in your communities. John Bartlett, Carolyn Magee, Matt Clarkin, Chris Durkin, thank you for sharing all this information. Every time I think I've got a grip on how complicated it is, you guys say something that shows it's so much more complicated than we imagined. So
Right.
I'm pleased that you've mastered all of this.
And we know we have your emails now, so trust us when we say we're going to be sending you questions so that we can make sure that our website is really up to date.
So, and I'd like to personally thank Stacy and Mara for making this come together without a hitch. So thank you.
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
And we hope you and everyone enjoyed the discussion, learned as much as we did. If you value events that educate voters about civic issues like this, please support Defending Democracy by donating at nj11.org. We'll put the link again in the chat. We're also going to be putting a recording of tonight's panel onto the NJ 11th for Change website over the weekend, and we'll encourage you, to make it easier to share it with members of your community.
All right.
Thanks so much.
So good night, everyone. Thank you so much. I learned a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
good night.